So, welcome everybody, and appreciate you coming to the live question and answer session with Victor Correa from the International Raw Materials Observatory, following up on his discussion about conflict minerals and the role that consumers play in this whole process, and about some of the innovations that are out there in helping to address that. So we are, just everyone knows, we are recording this Q&A. Hopefully there won't be any questions anyone has concern about having available in perpetuity. I'm going to go ahead and just get us started by asking Victor, maybe could you just give us a refresher on some of your background, and
yes.
Maybe what you think is the key takeaway from your talk.
Okay, so on my background first, so I started my career as a geologist working underground in volcanic massive sulfide deposits. At the time, that mine in the Iberian Pirate Belt was basically extracting copper. These days, it's more on zinc. But this is how I started my career. Later on, I moved to the environmental part of Geosciences. And then I had the opportunity to make extra training on management. I made an MBA, and in a way that's switched my interest also to management. But all my life I've been linked to the geosciences world because I was working in different geosciences companies until I joined the European Federation of Geologists, where I served for 6 years, and more recently I'm in the International Raw Materials Observatory, which is a not-for-profit organization based in Brussels that tries to facilitate international cooperation on mineral topics.
So Victor, I have a couple for you. So you talk about the situation like with gold, where one of the countries paid slightly above market rate to, in essence, control the environment, which was attractive in that circumstance. But when you have a situation with companies, Western companies, not wanting to have conflict minerals in their supply chain, and there's questions about the viability. You were talking about some of the challenges in the tracing and when things get mixed. Does that in the end make those same minerals that are mined outside of these conflict zones, do they command a higher price then on the market because they're already known from reliable sources, or does it not matter?
No, I believe it does not matter. Giving you a straight answer, and I believe this is part of the problem. Well, it's only a small part of the problem. We must also understand that these days, commodities and the way the word we use to describe this complex source is commodities. And by definition, a commodity is something that has all the properties defined from the start, and the only thing that changes is the price. That's the reason why typically commodities have stock markets, because you believe that if you are buying sugar or flour or copper, basically it's the same. And for people working in geosciences, we know that is not the same. But nevertheless, there is this strong push on the minerals industry to provide the minerals at the lowest possible price. And as a consequence, the market does not value the fact that you are obtaining your raw materials from sustainable, or in a way for more, let's say, fair origins. And this is something that will happen only after you have some sort of system in place where consumers are interested in knowing more about the origins of the raw materials, of these ingredients that exist in our gadgets. And in my opinion, this is the push that will make the industry being more open to pay an extra for that extra value.
Okay. So, I guess another question is what, if one was wanting to sort of make investments in, improving this reliability of the supply chain, and things. Is there any effort to move the milling process, the sort of finishing processes closer to the sources, so there's less chance of mixing and all the other scenarios that you were discussing that make this so challenging?
Interesting. This is one solution, but if you compare the interest of the producing countries with the interests of the buyers, I mean the international buyers, you see that international buyers normally they don't want added value products. I mean, you don't want to buy the next step in the ore processing. I mean, you just want raw ore, and this happens because part of the added value you want to provide it yourself in your own country by your own industry. And we call these moves or these at least these in a way these pushes from some countries that are trying to improve the added value in their own country, we call it nationalism or resources nationalism. And we have many examples from different countries. You have seen this happening in Indonesia for nickel. You also have seen this happen. I remember the DRC approved a new mining code 2 years ago with the same goal. And even in Europe, you have recently the Portuguese government just approved a new mining law for lithium, basically, because there are strong lithium demand. And one of the takeaways is that they try to favor the transformation of lithium inside the country. And in a way, that would be good because in a way it facilitates the tracking of the materials from the extraction until that part of the processing, until these initial steps. But normally the other countries don't like it because in a way this is a move that hinders or it curbs the international trade. And that's the reason why we label it for the time being resources nationalism. But it might be a way out.
Right. And so, I mean, I guess building on that, we are, I think globally, you could argue we've been seeing the rise of this resource nationalism across the board. With the various laws that were passed, Dodd-Frank and some of the legislation passed in the EU and other countries, those were in a very different global trade environment at that time. Do those laws need to be re-envisioned for sort of the new realities, or are they sort of resilient and can sort of deal with these changes that are going on in the global trade environment?
Well, I believe it will depend. I mean, now you have like a fight between the liberal order and in a way a new world where you won't be having this open markets approach, and in the best possibility you'll be having like groups of countries that will be trading among themselves. The problem for minerals and for the industry is that if you look to a sophisticated industry like the US industry or the German industry, no country or no group of countries has all the minerals that a sophisticated industry needs, simply because technology today demands that you use more than 60 or 70 at least different elements from the periodic table. It's not like the Industrial Revolution where you have like 10 different elements, and of course in those times iron and carbon, because of coal, were the main ingredients. But nowadays it's completely different, meaning that I believe that the existing systems, the existing framework with the Dodd-Frank, the European directive, etc., are the best ones if you consider that trade will be open, like it was in the liberal times. If you want, in the order that we have before these last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. For the future, I'm afraid that these new changes will be also seeds for conflict. And I just noticed the wording of the executive order that was published, I believe, 3 or 4 days ago by the US government. And the wording is that the US considers now that it cannot depend on sources of minerals that are coming from foreign adversaries. So this is already a different wording. It's not foreign countries. It's foreign possible, if you want, competitors that they are not seen on a positive light, not anymore. And for that, you need a completely different framework, which I believe it does not exist anymore, and most probably will be lefting out some of these poor countries or less sophisticated countries that you have in South America or in Africa, which are also providers of the raw materials we need.
You talked about blockchain, as an innovation that helps, is helping in this tracking the mineral supply chain. Do you see what are some of the other technologies that you think that are either coming on board, say, like, Elon Musk's, satellite network that will bring high-speed internet globally, or, maybe things that need to be developed that might further really allow this supply chain tracking all the way from the pit, to manufacture?
We have a problem with minerals, and in a way it's a crucial point because it's a control point, and this is the smelters. But in a way, the smelting operation is also a problem because you can have all sorts of systems in place, but once the minerals are smelted, and once you have a completely different material, you will be having sorry, I missed the word now, but you'll be having an alloy. Exactly. Thank you, Chris. So we'll be having an alloy, and then it's difficult to track the ores that you use to create that alloy. And the problem is that with the high temperatures that you have in the smelting presses, that erases everything. However, there are new technologies. One of alongside blockchain. But I believe that the technologies that imprint on the ores, on the material, some sort of characteristic that you can track along the process might be a good answer. The problem, as I said, was the smelting process, and that affects some of these technologies, as the DNA paternity test that I mentioned in my talk. But we have more on the pipeline. I remember at least two. One is quantum dots. Quantum dots, in a way, is like you will be putting some nanomaterials with a typical, if you want, dots of a combination that will be like a barcode. And you know that these quantum dots, they are not destroyed at the high temperatures that you have in the smelting process, and they remain after that. So having this sort of technologies like quantum dots might help. Another technology that exists, and I'm not so sure about how it will change in the smelting process, because I've heard about it a couple of months ago. I heard that researchers were trying to investigate the presence of fungus and, if you want, organic matter that and the signatures of organic matter that you have in the ores, depending on the geographical location of the extraction place. According to them, some of these materials can resist high temperatures. I don't know exactly how high, but they were convinced that they could resist the smelting process, at least for materials like gold. But we know that the gold melting point is quite low. I'm not sure if it will work with tungsten, for instance, because this is the highest one. But there is quite a research on that. I believe that probably quantum dots is the best option that we have now, at least in the research horizon. But we have to wait and see.
Okay, excellent. Any questions from the audience?
I had a question about Wikirate. I had never seen that before, and I wondered, is that something that companies actively use when they're engaging in their purchasing, or is it something totally new that I just never seen?
Well, thank you for your question. Like you, it's also fresh to me, because these new tools that you have now, and it was my daughter. I have two daughters, and it was the youngest one that make me notice the existence of some of these websites, because they were looking to information about clothes and food, and they made me notice that it also exists for minerals. My point is that I do believe that these sources of information will be, in a way, more frequent and more common in the near future. And this is the good news, because you need that. And if you have that available on your mobile phone, which I would say by coincidence needs the raw materials that you want to track, but if you have that information on the palm of your hand, then you can check when you are buying or when you are planning to buy something, you can easily check if the origins of that product are in a way tracked. And also, in my opinion, this is a sort of push that makes the companies more interested in ingredient branding. We also need to realize that this is not news. As I was saying, this is something that has been having a long period of experience in other materials. You have that for instance, in fibers, you have the Lycra fiber, and you have the tag inside of a clothing piece saying this is Lycra, or you have the Walmart, or you have in your computer the Intel inside, which is also an ingredient branding tag. So the point is that if you make consumers aware that the raw materials matter, I mean, this is important to track the source of the raw materials, then the brands and the original equipment manufacturers will act. And that, I believe, it will make the difference. And you notice that today some of especially in luxury brands, just let me give you an example, because this is something I've seen in the World Materials Forum 2 years ago, and they were telling me that luxury car brands like Porsche, they don't want to use recycled materials because their consumers don't want recycled materials. On the other way, other brands, and the example they gave me was Renault and Citroën, they are glad to tell their consumers that they use some recycled materials in brand new cars because their consumers value that. So we just need to make the brands aware that today, in this new world, people is interested in knowing the origins of the materials because they can make a difference and in a way contribute to a better world. I don't know if I answer your question, but this is my perception. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So Victor, a question for you. If you were talking to geology majors right now, college, university students, what would, and they're very interested in this topic and would like to sort of build a career towards addressing this issue, what would you be recommending as the educational preparation they should pursue? I mean, are there specific skills or pathways that they should be looking at to get engaged into this entire environment? Because it's obviously an emerging field.
Yeah, and you are touching, I would say, your question is very difficult to answer, because what we have seen today at the skill set level is that things are changing, and they are changing very fast. Because until recently, you could say that geologists were irreplaceable. And we have this, I'm a geologist, and we have this content person, we need to sign the resources and reserves reports. In a way, we have a set of skills that you cannot find in other professions. But these days, I do believe that artificial intelligence will be, in a way, more effective in some of the mining activities. What will be, at least also in my perception for the moment, difficult to replace is our capacity to connect with people. So you can have machines that can do the part of the exploration analysis, but in the end, you need someone as a human being capable of going to the field, understanding the environment and also the geological environment, and also capable of establishing connections with people. And then in this conflict minerals topic, I do believe that it's this capacity of, in a way, using your background, your scientific background, but also your capacity to engage with people, to communicate with people, to make them understand that if you are a good example, if you are talking with artisanal miners, to make them understand that they can benefit from using better tools or safety equipment. This is not an extra burden. It's something that is useful for them. But if you need to talk to policymakers, you also need to make them understand that artisanal mining is also important because there is a social value in it. So having this broad understanding, I believe it's crucial for the future. Answering your question in a more effective way, you need to have the scientific background, but you also need to develop your skills, your social skills. So you need to have a better understanding of people and people expectations, and also try to understand their perspectives and their and how to engage with them in a meaningful way. I believe this is key for the future in our profession. Just let me also add that, especially if you work in mining, you know that there is a strong public opposition to mining. And this is happening because people have this image of the past. And also sometimes the industry still behaves as it. Some mistake made by a company creates a stain that affects all the industry, and this still happens today. So to counter that, you need to, and normally geologists are the first group of people that goes to a greenfield site. You need to be sure that you have this group of people capable of understanding the community and their aspirations.
So one last question I have for you, Victor, from that we've gotten before is, so outside of the smelting challenge, where the stuff gets mixed, what is the, what do you see within that supply chain, the custody chain in the supply chain, is probably the most important for ensuring the credibility of the original supply? Where do you think that the risk is greatest, of that tracking breaking, and not necessarily being corrupted, but being too much uncertainty for it, and end user to feel confident in the origin of the material?
As you mentioned, the smelting part of the process, the next one, of course, in my opinion, is that we don't really have a supply chain. You don't have one chain. You have like a huge network, and you can understand from the original equipment manufacturer. So the guy that places his brand on the computer or on the phone or on the car, you can clearly link this brand name with the products. But in fact, this original equipment manufacturer, it does not produce all the parts that you have today inside a car. You gave the example of Tesla. Tesla does not produce all the parts. I mean, they buy the batteries to a different contractor, then they buy the cables from another, and all these small parts, they just assemble together and they build a car, which is already a car with their brand name and the value that it has. Meaning that it's, in my opinion, it's all these small parts that you need to combine to assemble product. I believe it's in that network, because these days these networks are so complex and it's very difficult. I mean, if you have even sometimes basic materials, like I have a grill that I need to replace one of the parts of the grill, and I was trying to understand from the part number where this was made, and I came to the conclusion that I have at least 3 different origins for that product, depending on the year when that part was made. And the grill is made in the United States, is a Weber grill. So just to show how complex these days with this different network of suppliers, how difficult it is for us as consumers to understand where the different parts are coming from. And I believe this is, in a way, what we need also. It's probably the next step, is that instead of having only the final brand worried with their brand name and reputation, you'll be having also the different ingredients, I mean the different parts of the car or the different parts of the computer, also worried with their reputation. Again, using the computers, I believe the Intel Inside example is a very good one. So Intel is worried because their brand name is also in the tag outside the computer. And it doesn't matter if a computer is a Toshiba or a Hewlett-Packard or a Asus. I mean, if it has an Intel inside, then that ingredient is important. And I believe this is probably the next step. So people will be also asking if the different parts are also tracking the origins of the materials they use. And in a way, this is part of this push that I believe could be powered, leveraged by consumers. I was tweeting today about this idea that I have that consumers are like an army, saying that we have it's like the Infinity Stones from the Marvel superheroes. I mean, all these stones combined, and these are all the systems. It's on one hand the consumers, but also the tracking systems in place. All of them combined, they are invincible, and we can track easily the origin of all the materials.